All right, so this week, Italy reported its lowest number of deaths in a week, while the pace of new infections also slowed. The European country once had the highest death toll and cases in the world, but a strict lockdown policy there has seemed to work. And in comparison, the coronavirus deaths in the United States have exceeded 45,000 as protests against the stay-at-home orders flared in a number of states there. Let's take a look at some of the latest statistics for both nations. So those countries are still considered high risk. Let's take a look. For example, in the United States, the total number of confirmed cases, 826,248, with the total deaths at 45,153. So that's where the United States stands at this point. Let's go to Italy now. Let's have a look at that. If you look at the number of total confirmed cases there, 187,000, I beg your pardon, 327, and the total deaths there, 25,085. So with that, those particular areas are still considered high risk, of course. So joining me tonight via Skype, South Africa's ambassador to the United Nations, Jerry Magila, based in New York, the state most impacted by the coronavirus in the United States, and South Africa's Consulate General based in Milan, Italy, Diti Ngumalo. Thank you very much indeed to you both for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much, Griselda.
Thank you very much, Griselda.
All right, Ambassador Magila, let me start with you. Thanks indeed for joining us. So while the world is battling an unprecedented crisis, you know, the United Nations, which is pressed with international issues and maintaining world peace and security, it's equally unprecedented that the body has also been forced to discharge its mandate virtually.
You know, Griselda and South African viewers, thanks very much. This is difficult times, challenging times, and we are moving into uncharted territories. So we had to adjust because we still have to discharge our mandate under United Nations Charter, especially South Africa now that you are non-permanent Security Council. So we cannot close our eyes on various conflicts in the world, including in Africa. So we then decided to go online. Like this morning, with a lengthy VTC on the conflicts around the Great Lakes of Africa and Venezuela. So it's a daily thing. We are back in a normal, abnormal situation, but we have not lessened the capacity and the attention on the mandate that the world expects us to do to try to bring peace and stability in the world.
Let's bring you in there, Consul General Ngumalo. I mean, it's obviously very difficult, you know, for you to also discharge your mandate there. Italy, of course, had been in the forefront in terms of the numbers until, of course, the United States had taken over in terms of the toll and the number of infected cases. I mean, how difficult has it been for you as a diplomat in one of those high-risk areas?
Good evening, Cassandra, and good evening to the viewers in South Africa. Yes, it has been very difficult for us as diplomats to be able to work as normal. Things change because we had to start working from home, and it has not been easy because some of the things need us to be there physically. But especially when we have a big number of South Africans in the country that needed to be repatriated, so doing it telephonically has really been a challenge for us.
And I will come to that very quickly, CG. If we could just ask you to please have someone just turn off the television set there. We're getting a little bit of feedback. Let me come to you, Ambassador Magila, in New York. I mean, you know, the United Nations Secretary General has said that this pandemic also poses a significant threat to the maintenance of international peace and security, leading to a potential increase in social unrest and violence, which could undermine the ability to fight the virus. Is there a consensus in the Council that the coronavirus is, in fact, a threat to international peace and security?
You know, there is an ongoing debate. Actually, I have in front of me a resolution of the Security Council on COVID-19. part of that, our approach was, rather let's address COVID-19 and its impact on the maintenance of peace and security, and address issues like, do we have enough capacity to assist countries in conflict to deal with COVID-19? Secondly, can we have assistance to refugees, displaced persons, and migrants to make sure that there are no impact negatively by this? And also, can we agree on lifting sanctions on those countries that are facing COVID-19 pandemic, especially in Afghan continent, so that they have a capacity to access life-saving equipment and medicine to deal with it. So that is the general approach we are having in the Security Council. We still be debating, we are dealing with this resolution, but South African position and that of Africa has been, we are in this thing together, worldwide. This pandemic knows no borders. This pandemic doesn't choose who we are, developed or underdeveloped, rich or poor. It's a pandemic, and we need to close rank and solidarity. So we then said, because the General have called for global ceasefire, let's ask all the fighting all over the world to come to an end, to cease, to have fire, so that we then pay our attention on trying to capacitate countries, regions, territories, governments, NGOs to deal with COVID-19 pandemic. So that is the thrust now. So yesterday we had lengthy discussions around these matters, including listening from the World Food Programme, World organizations to say, how far are we in terms of the needs of people, especially vulnerable people, women, children, and those in the refugees, migrants, especially in conflict areas. So for us, it's a very holistic approach, including, of course, ravages of climate change that exacerbate the situation itself.
Ambassador, if it is so, then why has the Security Council, according to some, been so silent on COVID-19? I mean, the Secretary General has called for a global ceasefire, as you allude to, silencing of the guns, but we still see escalating conflict in Yemen, in Libya. But to date, he has received scant support from the body that can impose such a measure.
Actually, Criselda, if you observe in the last 2 weeks, in every conflict, we make pronouncement at the end of our VTC debate about COVID. Whether it was in the Palestine question, whether it was in Western Sahara, it was in Yemen, it was in Libya, it was in Sudan, in all this conflict, like 2 days back, in terms of the Colombia, we always, as Security Council, issue a press elements to say, we are concerned about the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on peace and security. We are concerned about the vulnerabilities of people in these areas, and therefore mobilize the international community to assist these countries. So we have always issued a statement. I think what we are working to is a Security Council-wide resolution.
Yes.
But it's not that we have been quiet all the time. We've been addressing these issues. Like we have been doing in the General Assembly process, we have so far 2 resolutions in the General Assembly in the issue of COVID-19 and assisting, actually amplifying the voice of Secretary General to say, let's mobilize the international community, let's have solidarity fund, let's have resources to deal with COVID-19 worldwide.
CG, let me bring you in there in Milan. Is there any indication at this stage about how many South Africans are caught up in this global pandemic where you are? And have there been any calls for assistance from some of them there?
That here in Ag we have over 200 South Africans that need to be repatriated, and fortunately last week I think you witnessed a big number of them, about 76 of them, who were successfully repatriated and they arrived in South Africa. But we still have some that are remaining here in Italy. Most of them are the ones that are working for the cruise liners. They are crew members. They are still remaining. And we have, I think, about 15 or so of them who are still quarantined because they tested positive to COVID-19, so they are still under quarantine. But as soon as they are healthy, they will also be repatriated to South Africa. There was a flight that left with people from Iran. It left last week, I think it was early hours of Saturday morning. And there is another one again that will be leaving on the 24th. So we are busy with the repatriation of South Africans that are stranded in Italy.
Yes. And what kind of support is being given to them, CG? For example, those who are still in quarantine and also those that are yet to leave that part of where you are. You say in the next 2 days they will be repatriated from Milan or from Italy back to South Africa.
Yes, the flights usually leave from Rome, which is the capital. But the ones that are quarantined, if I can start with those under quarantine, is that they are under. You remember that those are the ones that are not just ordinary South Africans who are stranded, but they are the ones that were on the cruise, on the ship cruise. So the ship liners are responsible for them, and they are under quarantine under the government of Italy. But sometimes there are cases where, as the missions, we have to assist. For instance, there was an incident where there was a couple who were running short of their medication. Some staff from the embassy in Rome, they had to go and buy those medication and gave it to the people who needed it. And there's some food as well that has been given to them, though they are receiving food because the cruise ship is taking care of them. And then the ones that are the crew members, they are still at work. That's why they didn't release them, but they are healthy because they also tested and they went through the test and they tested negative, but the crew decided to keep them because they are still working. But those that were stranded, they were repatriated last week. We are only left with the ones that are not well.
All right. Ambassador Majila, let me bring you back in there again. I mean, this was supposed to be South Africa's last tenure in the Security Council as a rotating member. And clearly, you had an agenda in terms of things you wanted the Security Council to address. Has the spread of the coronavirus derailed that agenda?
Not yet, Griselda. You know, the President Ramaphosa, Minister Naledi Pandor, and the government have asked us to stay the course. Remember, this year we are the chair of the AU. Yes. And we need to see peace and stability in the continent. And that is our thrust of our work, to make sure that at all costs, under whatever circumstances, we create means to address the issue of peace and security in the continent. That's why in this week, last month, under these diverse circumstances, we make sure that every second day, the Security Council turn attention on African issues, African conflicts. We are also now facing, as you know, 17 other elections will be coming in Africa. Yes. So we are saying the council, difficult as it might be, let's make sure that these countries have transparent, inclusive elections under these circumstances. If they postpone, let's make sure that at the earliest time, they re-establish these elections. So in the issue of the DRC, like this morning we're discussing the DRC, we're discussing South African Republic, we're discussing Burundi, we're discussing Rwanda, we're discussing the issue of Uganda. We say in all these areas, there is a new wind, positive wind blowing. You can see the stability of the DRC had become so important in stabilizing the region. You can see that rapprochement led by Angolan President Lourenço in trying to put the countries together. You can see South Sudan now, we have a government of national unity. You can see South African Republic with the process towards the election. So even this morning discussions, with our emphasis, and together with the three other African countries, Niger and Tunisia, joined by the Grenadines, we said there is this positive development needs to be harnessed going forward. The other time we discussed in South Sudan and said, look at South Sudan, we could also discuss it on Friday. there is a new transitional authority in South Sudan. So let's remove all these obstacles like these unilateral sanctions that can torpedo or make it difficult for the new administration to get the resources. We'll be discussing Somalia next time. So what we have done as South Africa, Niger, Tunisia, as a 3-member Security Council, was to make sure that we keep on pushing and pushing the process towards normalization, or at least some form of a truce and negotiations in the African continent. We also discussed Libya last week, and our approach has been to the P5, has been to post-Berlin, that you have to give Africa, the AU, the central place to play in these conflicts.
Yeah.
If you ignore the voice of Africa, it is on your own peril. So please use complementarities. Otherwise, after all, Chapter 8 of Security Council of the United Nations, they do recognize the importance of sub-regional organizations like the AU. So we can see now there is, an agreement that indeed the AU should play a role as a continental organization, which also had its own architecture, peace and security. So we have a very dynamic contact, especially now that South Africa is a coordinator of these 3 countries Security Council. Yeah. We have a dynamic link with Ambassador Makaya in Addis Ababa, link with Sheikhi, Commissioner Faki, link with Minister Naledi Pandor, with Ambassador Nkosi. So these multilateral, trilateral linkages assist us to have one narrative, one voice, although different platforms, and they can see the impact. The impact such that there is no way Security Council can discuss Africa without coming to us, because we are united, we were a bit forceful, but we got the backup from our capitals, backup from President Ramaphosa as the chair of the AU this year, with his bureau and with his colleagues, and we can count on him, can count on the Commissioner Faki and commissioners at the AU to back us to deal with these issues. So we will continue. It's our task, it's our mandate until 31st of December. We will raise the issue of Africa. We will raise the issue that Africans should be allowed to play the role in resolving African conflict. After all, the Africans have the capacity, they've got the political will, they're determined, they're willing to contribute. 80% of peacekeepers in Africa are Africans. The first time ever, majority of peacekeepers in the most hostile environment are Africans. They're there because we believe it's our turn to resolve problems of conflict in the spirit of silencing the guns in the continent.
Ambassador, we're fast running out of time. Let me bring in the CG. CG, are there any South Africans where you are who've opted not to come back to the country? And if so, what kind of assistance is being given to them?
Yes, there are South Africans who opted not to go back to South Africa. And I have one case actually of a student who decided not to go back to South Africa, instead to use this time to continue with her studies and catch up where she needs to catch up. The support that we give is just to be in contact with her and checking her whether she's okay or not on a daily basis, because she's on scholarship, and the scholarship, the Erasmus Mundi scholarship, they are taking care of her in almost everything. We just, as a mission, make sure that we use our contacts in the area where she is to supply her with a laptop that she did not have, and many other things that she needed to go to the shop, the masks, she needed gloves, and all those things. So we then requested some people in the region where she is to assist her with that. And we check her on a daily basis, and she is fine. She's happy.
All right, I'm afraid we've run out of time this evening. Thank you very much indeed, South Africa's ambassador to the United Nations, Jerry Magila, and South Africa's Consul General based in Milan, Italy, Mayor, of course, Titisteni Nxumalo. Thank you very much indeed for speaking to us here on the SABC News Channel. Of course, in one of, the top 2 countries, the high risk, carrying out their duties as diplomats there. Thank you very much indeed for joining us here on the program. I think we're going to go to a break. Yes, indeed we are. Let's take a short break here on The Full View. We'll wrap up the last half hour here of the program. Do stay with us.